Many people ask how LifeWise Academy handles accommodations for students with special needs, such as those with disabilities, behavioral issues, IEPs, and even food allergies. Senator Huffman touched on this during Joel Pitton's Senate Bill 293 testimony.
Thank you, Chairman. I kind of alluded to this last week. So you have the ability, if there's a severely handicapped child, to put him on the bus. Do you provide the medical aid like the school does, or how do you handle that disability going across town to your school?
Well, we know that by law we're not required to do that because we're a religious organization. By law we're not required to do that because we're a religious organization. By law we're not required to do that because we're a religious organization, but in every instance I know, our local teams make every effort to accommodate students. I mean, our program exists to engage and to reach students. And so I know we've had programs that had a standard bus and then a handicapped child wanted to join the program, and so they've literally sold that and purchased the bus that has the handicap accessible. And so those are local decisions.
So they don't have to take handicapped kids, or what about?
Not by law.
What Joel conveniently failed to mention about the program he is referring to is that they had to locally raise funds from donations to make these accommodations, not just sell the old bus. On top of this, they then removed the lift to make room for more students. With no requirements, policies, or accountability to medical needs, the lack of concern, guidance, and accommodation goes much deeper than just physical mobility. According to statements made by a board member in Worthington on 11/25/24, one parent removed their child over concerns regarding the use of an EpiPen.
The first time that we ever had the RTRI policy actually utilized was last year. We had 15 students at Worthington Park use it and 54 at Hills. Hills is not happening right now, and the number at Park is 21. A number is getting ready to go down to 18. As I understand, there's a student moving and then another student that has an EpiPen that the parents are pulling them out just because they have concerns over the proper implementation of that if there would be an emergency.
In addition to being unequipped to accommodate students with physical accessibility needs, local programs and their staff are completely unqualified to handle any kind of behavioral issues as well, despite LifeWise claiming otherwise.
One of the things I'm sure that I think is lost is that a lot of times we're getting retired teachers, we're getting teachers that are certified that for whatever reason have stepped away from the traditional setting. So there's a lot of expertise that comes into a LifeWise classroom that they know IEP, they know ESL, they know different instructional strategies to be able to meet students where they are. And again, be a value added to those teachers that are in the classroom as a reporter, facilitator, different types of things like that.
Let's take a look at how the supposedly certified and experienced LifeWise teacher handles a student with behavioral issues. This exchange is between a LifeWise representative and the principals and teachers of Defiant City Schools in Ohio. She is requesting a child be disciplined by not being allowed to attend LifeWise. While that is concerning, the body of the email details even more upsetting information, such as physical violence on the LifeWise bus and not reporting it immediately to school officials. This email is further detailing the previous incident. It is from the LifeWise program director to the public school principal and teacher. In this email, it becomes clear that the children were left on a bus unsupervised by adults, with one sitting in the bus driver's seat acting like he was driving. This in conjunction with the punching incident that had no adult witnesses. And now a volunteer was intimidated by third graders into leaving them on the bus, unsure and untrained on how to deal with the situation. The LifeWise director also states, "We want this type of student to be involved with LifeWise, as we all know he needs it." We disagree. We believe the last thing a child who is struggling needs is to be exposed to adults who have no training or education to safely and effectively support them. Here we see the principal doing a write-up based on behavior at LifeWise because the disciplinary issues are being presented to the school to handle, all with taxpayer-funded resources, time, and labor. Here we see a LifeWise representative speaking at length about reward charts and asking for the school to provide instruction on how it works, inquiring with school officials on how they handle these situations at school. It's clearly stated that these charts and instructions are sent for multiple children, meaning that taxpayer-funded time, labor, and resources are consistently being used. LifeWise is experiencing difficulty being able to get a student on the bus to come back to school, ultimately using candy to incentivize his behavior, stating that they were worried someone from the elementary would have to come and get him on the bus. They elaborate saying that this isn't the first instance, and prior, this child had been kicking the walls of the bus in protest. There's more discussion of punishing children by not allowing them to attend LifeWise, and yet more examples of serious behavioral issues that LifeWise is wholly unprepared and inept at handling, making the situation dangerous for all parties involved. This email is from a public school teacher to a LifeWise representative. It explains how the charts are used and emphasizes how they should be implemented. The discussion is centered around one child and details making him go to LifeWise despite his not wanting to. That he will destroy the chart in question, other negative instances he's experienced at LifeWise, and about what is described as constant and normal negative self-talking, such as I want to die, I want to kill myself, and the consequences the child receives for such talk. Here you can see a public school teacher explaining their ticket-based disciplinary system and then offering to implement and help facilitate its use for LifeWise. She also states, I will address the whole class about expectations during all specials and especially the privilege of LifeWise. Here is the reply to that email from the LifeWise representative to the public school teacher. It solidifies the use of taxpayer-funded resources and the teacher's time, and then goes on to discuss behavioral issues within the class in excruciating detail. Her largest issue? The argumentative nature of one child who she cannot tolerate challenging her. This anonymously submitted teacher testimony describes a LifeWise representative interrupting her class for updates on a specific student. It also details another instance where a LifeWise representative walks into a class to tell the teacher how quote unquote bad a child was and wanting her to discipline said child. Here we have an email from a LifeWise representative to public school officials. It includes the rundown of a shocking series of events in which a child is physically restrained by a LifeWise employee. He is then offered suckers and candy if he can obey. The child expresses his emotions, making serious and disturbing statements, throwing his peers' belongings, and curling up in a ball in the back of a classroom where he is left. There is no mention of any party notifying the parents at any time. The LifeWise employee is asking if this is normal behavior for the child and for any guidance on how to navigate it.
I learned a powerful story just recently. I was visiting one of our inner city programs with one of our donors who wanted to tour the program and see what it was like. And the donor just flat out asked the teacher, he said, this is great, but how do you know it's making a difference? And the teacher explained that in that school district, they had behavioral IEPs. Mm-hmm. And when they first started LifeWise Academy, they would get off the bus with clipboards that were about this big. Now those clipboards are down to here.
IEPs don't just disappear. This email is from an occupational therapist assistant at Elmwood Local Schools in Ohio. Here we see the employee creating a letter to send home with students asking their parents to choose between related services or LifeWise Academy should there be a conflict in scheduling, that these required hours may not be able to be made up. The reply is from the superintendent, who seems to think that this will give them legal protection against minutes required by IEP. Not only does LifeWise fail to provide accommodations or even qualified individuals, in fact, according to many reports and documents, they have the school send aides who are employed or contracted to the district, as shown here. LifeWise has no problem soliciting to and signing up students with English as a second language, even if their curriculum and teachers don't accommodate.
A follow-up.
Follow-up.
What about foreign language children?
We have
The Spanish speakers or
our classes are taught in English currently. Our curriculum is currently we're pursuing translating it to Spanish. We have permission slips and promotional materials in multiple languages, but the curriculum itself, the teaching itself is in English.
LifeWise employees don't even deny the extra work they put on teachers and administration, a problem which is only exacerbated by a lack of qualifications and accommodations for students who have special needs. For a program that exists to engage and reach students, LifeWise certainly doesn't seem to prioritize or even address the actual needs of those students. If organizations like these are using public schools to offer their services to students, they should not be allowed to discriminate in such a fashion.